4 days.
Yeah.
Oh, man. 4 days. You know, I would love to just go for 30 days. You know?
Do it.
You know?
30 days.
Right? Yep. You know, it's funny being up here. You just eventually get into that zone where it just becomes reality after a while. This is our reality that we've created together over these 4 days. Now we're moving in very deep down the rabbit hole. We are in the last half of the 4th day. And so I'm going to get to some ideas that for me have been the most important that I've ever had. So let me lead into them by sort of wrapping this last section, which sort of tees up the next set of ideas. All right. What you guys have basically, you know, had percolating in your mind here is that there's these new behaviors, new habits, new behavior patterns, and new thought patterns that can enter into your mind and grow. They're like new seeds, they grow. And there's all of these different understandings that you're slowly implementing, okay? You know, the easier ones are things like eye contact. As a newbie, we go out and we give eye contact and we go, wow, look at that. I was walking down the street and I held eye contact with this girl and she maintained it the whole time. She smiled. Maybe I could have dated her. All right? You know? And, you know, we learn, like, you know, we start to get these new understandings. Then there's more complicated understandings, like, you guys might remember from Foundations, I spoke about the idea of vibing. And learning that when you vibe with somebody, that is not a linear conversation that has a purpose, but it's a non-purposeful conversation. Right? Do you guys remember that? Yeah. Okay. You remember how, like, see, to me, what vibing is sort of a way of cleansing yourself out. All right? Remember we've spoken about the idea of being present, being in the moment? Well, what social vibing does for me is I can find I could be having like the toughest day, right? Have any of you guys ever been having like the toughest day? And some days can be tough, of course, for all of us. And then you just go out and maybe you hang out with your friends or you go out to a nightclub or somewhere social, wherever it is. And after a night of just kind of vibing with people, you walk home thinking like, what was the big deal? Yeah. Anyone ever had that experience? You just kind of walk home, you know, it's crazy. Like you just sort of walk home and you know, if you had a good night, you just feel good. And in a lot of ways, that's because the idea of being in the moment and presence is contagious. All right? That's really the thing, is that if you have an individual who's very stuck in his head and has all this noise going on in his mind, and you have that strong degree of presence, you can pull him out of that. All right? And when people go out and vibe, that's what they're doing. This is the whole issue where a lot of guys that come into learning success with women, they learn about being social, and then once they get a girlfriend or a wife, they think it ends there. Right? Whoa, I can just go back to being, you know, World of Warcraft man now. Right? I can go back to my old self and just be an introvert and not socialize. And then a lot of those old habits come back. Learning this stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be going around, you know, hooking up with girls left and right. But the new social habits that you get, those kinds of things, to me, those are maintained. All right? In fact, and I've said this before, whenever I read a book, all right, and I'm reading a book, on one level, sure, I'm looking for that information out of it. Like I want new ideas. But on another level, to me what reading a book is, a book by, you know, a book that was written by someone who's very present, is that it's pulling me back into that empowering state of mind. It's amazing how with like a great author, your mind can be totally fried, and you can almost just pick up the book off the shelf, look at it, and it puts you back into that zone, right? And that's a habit that to me goes every day. And the same goes with vibing with people. That's really what it's about. But you see, when you work a lot, say that you work a job like, say, as a computer programmer, as an engineer, for example, what that is a very logical state of mind. Have you guys ever heard the concept that logic is the opposite of emotion? Yeah. Right? So logic and emotion are almost like oil and water, right? They flush each other out. And so, for example, look, say that you're making out with a girl in bed, and then suddenly you say, hey, what is 6 times 6? Is it, 36? What is it? All right? And then, what does that do, guys? What kind of response does that create in the woman? Confusion. Massive confusion, right? It's a vibe breaker. You know what I'm saying? It's a total vibe breaker. And when you're vibing with people, whenever you're trying to be too logical oftentimes that can be a vibe breaker. Other times you can be being logical and be vibing kind of, intermittently, and that can be happening as well. But the idea being that socializing and vibing with people is an end in and of itself. All right? That's, where you ask people, say that you ask someone a rhetorical question and they think you're quizzing their intelligence. They're testing your intelligence. Like the classic example being like, hey, I just got this new jacket. It's really cool. Guess how much I paid for it? And the guy's like, wait a minute. He says guess how much he paid for it. That means it's low. I'm going to show him how smart I am by saying something really low. And he's like, $5. And you're like, well, I paid $20, but it's still low. And he's like, oh, yeah. Right? And it's like, right? It's a vibe breaker, okay? And some people do that, and I used to do that myself for years and years. When you're vibing with somebody, if you feel like you're having to prove yourself, that's not really vibing. You guys understand that? All right? Do you guys understand that emotional states are addictive? These are just some quick last-minute touch-ups that I want to do before we sort of wrap this whole program, right? Just some last-minute concepts I want to remind you guys of. State being addictive, right? So look at it this way. If somebody is addicted to positivity and you talk to them about something negative, what's typically the response from them? They'll leave, right? Or say that it's a friend. Say that you're in a very negative mood and you've got a friend who's addicted to positivity. And you're like, oh, dude, all this stuff that's happening, it sucks, it's so bad. He might say, oh, dude, man, that sucks, man. Don't worry about it. Maybe he'll reframe it, right? He'll say, well, maybe this good will come out of it. Don't worry about it. How about somebody who's addicted to negativity? What'll happen when you bring up a negative topic? Play off of it. Go with it. Explore it. Look at all the other negative ramifications that it has, right? And really sink their teeth into it. Okay? And it's really interesting because when you look at the sort of ways the sort of topics that people talk about, you can see what they're addicted to. Understand that negativity and positivity, these are different emotional states. And the more often that you access an emotional state, the more synaptic pathways that your mind creates in order to access it again and again and again. Did you also know that memory is state access dependent? Yes. So for example, if you're in a very negative state, the memories that you also had while being in a previous negative state will be more in the forefront of your reality. This is why when you're having a chode night, it feels like you have been a chode forever. Right? And when you're having a great night, tell me if this is not true, when you're having a great night, you're like, why did I ever care about this? This is so easy. I've always been like this. Right? It's always been like this. Why was it? Why am I stressing? It's always been easy when you're having a great night because in the forefront of your reality, you remember those nights, right? And what's also interesting is when you're feeling negative, you're thinking about these other negative things that happens, and the cause and effect relationship in your mind is screwed up because you're thinking, I feel bad. Why do I feel bad? Because these other negative things that I'm thinking about. That's what's making me feel bad. You guys see the cause and effect mix up here? Yeah. When you're in a negative state, you remember things that make you feel bad. And then you go, why am I negative? I know, let's rationalize. It's because of that. All right? So, how about with a logical state of mind and an emotional state of mind? If you're used to being a computer programmer, for example, and you're doing logic all day, a lot of the time when you get out to that social gathering, you feel alienated from the environment. You feel disconnected. You're seeing people playing around, and you're still trying to compute it. All right? That's because the emotional side hasn't come in. See, a logical conversation, who did this? All right. Okay? Prank on the teacher. All right. Look. Okay. All right. Oh my God, man. All right. So look, a logical conversation, it's linear. All right? It goes like that. Okay? It's very linear. That's how it goes. So in your mind, in the thinking in your mind, you're thinking very linearly. Vibing is more like this. It's more like, here's you, and it's just kind of going like that. Kind of similar to that other picture. All right, so look. Basically what's happening is this. When you're vibing with somebody, okay, you want to learn how to get quick wit. You guys want to learn that? Yeah. Like sharp wit, like that instant nice wit. What basically happens is your mind plays an association game. That's what's going on there. So say that somebody says some word, and you want to make a joke about that word. People who are sharp-witted, they don't have that very logical. They might have that side of themselves developed, but that's not what they're engaging when they're being quick-witted. What quick wit comes from, essentially, is that in your mind, that kind of like, whatever joke the person threw at you or whatever word they said that you want to be witty with, that goes to your head, and your mind quickly cycles through, in about 1 millisecond, like 1,000 different things that are related to that you could use to misinterpret it. Do you guys see what I'm saying here, right? Because a lot of wit is misinterpretation, or to playfully frame control, like in some witty way or whatever it is. And your mind, and so when you're vibing with somebody, or especially with a girl, you feel your mind just kind of floating, all right? Like your thoughts are sort of floating. And so, say that you're speaking with a girl and there's like a really great pickup going on. I mean like a really smooth one. What's essentially happening is you're both kind of like in this floating headspace where she just sort of shoots something out there, and you're just kind of like, and like little associations just sort of arise. Do you guys see the difference between the thoughts arise to you as opposed to like you chase the thoughts? Basically, when you're relaxed and you're not trying to force it by thinking linearly, but you're vibing with somebody, little funny images that sort of amuse you kind of come up. So she says something that amuses her, and then that kind of shoots an image into your head, like a fun image, and then you sort of shoot something back, that amuses yourself and therefore amuses her back, all right? And that's sort of what a really great interaction looks like. So if you look at a guy who's really great with women, if he's talking to a girl in a nightclub, because what is the whole what's the value in a nightclub? Fun, right? So think about the context here. If you're in a nightclub and you're talking, basically what's going on is you're both having fun, you're both, it's just sort of floating. You guys see what I'm saying here? Right? You're both just kind of like, blah, like just floating. And there's no like trying to qualify yourself. You're not like sinking back into your head and like, it's not like she says, oh, I went to this city. And then you're like, wait a minute, I have a very impressive trip in that city. I'm going to tell her about it now so she'll like me. You guys see the difference here? All right? And you have to trust that process. So things like understanding that you can condition yourself towards positivity. Things like understanding what vibing is. Things like understanding that you don't need to qualify yourself. These are really big things that you internalize. You can hear them here in the seminar, but you may not have internalized them until you go out and get the reference experiences to see what it's all about and to trust them. Remember we said trusting in a foreign set of bearings? You have to trust them. So how about, to me, the two most important bearings that you have to trust, one is the first one, which we already mentioned, and that's that girls can like you just for you. What does that mean? Try walking up and talking to a girl and being in the moment and not thinking ahead and just allowing it to go in whatever direction it's going to go without stretching and striving for outcome. And beyond that, the other one that I think to me is like the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy for guys who really live in abundance when it comes to women is the belief and the total internalization that sex between a man and a woman is a natural consequence of chemistry and an inevitability. More than anything. You know how when you really believe that you can talk to anybody? Have you guys ever had a night where you really believe that you could talk to anybody? Right? And you walk up and you totally anticipate a positive response, right? Your anticipated responses are always positive on that. Well, how about when you get used to the phone, right? Say that you've got it into your list of assumptions that you can talk to any girl or any guy. Great. But now you're not used to calling on the phone. So you get used to calling on the phone, right? It goes into your reality that you can call girls on the phone and they'll be cool about it. And that even if they're not, it doesn't matter. Well, see, to me, the kind of like the last one, beyond like learning to extract, learning that you can make out, the very final one is changing your beliefs about sex to being like this big deal, to just being a way to cement a moment or a way to blow off steam. All right? Because think about it. When you look at like a party, right? When you guys think about a party, how do people wind up hooking up? Typically what happens is everybody's having fun, everyone's having a good time, and then the sort of tension and the energy builds, and then it's just a way to blow off steam, right? Maybe you have a nice moment with a girl, and it's a way to cement the moment. But rather than thinking of it as some kind of big deal, okay? And it's the guys who have really internalized that sex is just a natural thing, it's not a big deal. Like, say that you wind up hooking up with a girl, you're not going to your friends like, holy shit, dude, I hooked up with this girl, it was nuts. All right? Trying to bring it into your ego structure. It's just not a big deal. It's a part of your everyday life. All right? You can always tell a newbie who's really proud that he's getting laid because he's going to tell everybody about every conquest that he's had. Right? He wants everybody to know about it. He needs them to know about it. And that's fine. I'm not Everyone's at a different point in their development. I'm not remotely even criticizing, because we've all done it at different points. But the thing is, I think when you've really arrived, it's just in your reality. It's like, yeah, of course, you know, girls, guys, sex, like, okay, whatever, right? You can take a girl out, you're having fun together, you're not even really thinking about the outcome, but on the other hand, sex just keeps winding up happening. It just always happens, all right? It's just one of those things. It just happens. It's just a natural consequence, not a big deal. So look, here's where, to me, and this is sort of how we're transitioning, where things get really, really crazy. All right? Here's where things get out of control.